Hey guys, my name is Saleem Juma, your host of Saleem N Dion, the two co-host channel that stems from Operation Cold Front. Today, we're going to be asking people about how students in universities have been expelled for saying simply that there are only two genders. Now we're going to start this off by asking people how many genders there are. Because some people say 2, some people say 3, some people say 72, some people say there's 1,000, and some people say there's infinite, and you can be whatever you want to be, and we have to legally respond to you as such. It's gotten a little ridiculous if you ask me, so we're going to go around this college campus and talk to people and find out what they think if we're expelling people for so-called wrongthink, like in George Orwell's novel 1984. It seems to me that does seem to be the case, so we are going to go and find out what people think. I predict the responses will be, you're a bigot, you're transphobic, you're such and such-ish. But, alas, our job is to expose the tolerant left. Before I go into this video, I want to make sure I give a huge shout out to our Patreon subscribers. Kelsey, you are a huge help, and our other subscriber who wishes to remain anonymous and use the fake name, much love. You guys are supporting this channel. I want to give a shout out to the people who have recently sent us some money on Cash App. You guys are really a huge part of this channel because there are a lot of expenses to doing this every single day. And with that, stay classy.
For you today is I'm going to ask all of you, how many genders are there? And I want a number.
A number.
How many genders?
Yeah.
3.
Okay. What about you?
Yeah, 3.
Okay.
There's.
I'd go higher, probably 5 or 6, but I can't. Yeah, I guess. I'll go with 5. I'll just stick with 5.
Okay. So.
Can you name those genders?
Yeah.
I really can't.
Okay. So you two said 3. What's the third one outside of male and female?
I don't know what it's where like they don't
Whatever
want
people
to
decide.
pick. I don't
Whatever
know.
people
So, like,
decide they
both
want
at
to
the same
identify
time?
as.
Yeah.
It's like a
Where they don't
hermaphrodite,
comply
where they are
as-
born with they're born with male and female genitalia.
Yes.
It's a really rare occasion.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
actually
yeah.
called intersex, and it's 1.7% of the human population, not the American population.
Right. So yeah, now you said 5. Why 5?
I honestly, I'm not as knowledgeable on this topic as like I should be, but
Okay.
yeah, so I just guessed 5 because you said pick a number.
Okay, that is hilarious.
Well, the answer is you're all actually wrong. There's infinite number of genders, supposedly. Depending on what side of the political spectrum you are.
Yeah.
But do you guys identify as liberal or conservative?
I would say I'm liberal.
I think I'm liberal.
Yeah.
Okay, so the current left wing, Democrats, liberals, leftists, socialists, tend to believe, as a rule, that there are now infinite numbers of genders, with new ones being thought of every single day. So if my pronouns, if I identify as a slice of pizza with pineapple on it, you should respect my pronouns and address me as such. So that's the current belief.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that? About just identifying as anything you want?
Identifying as anything you want.
I believe we all have our own thing. Like we shouldn't judge each other. So
Yeah.
I mean, if one individual thinks of themselves as one thing, we don't have the right to judge that opinion. Like we should believe what we want.
Okay.
I think with that though, there is like a need for awareness in order for that to be like acceptable or like the norm, because like in hospital settings, like when people are charting, like they don't say like a slice of pizza when describing the patient. So I mean, I think there is that aspect, but
Sure.
it should be something
should.
that
I'm
is
gonna sue them.
considered.
Yeah, I know. Right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with them. I feel like anyone should be able to identify the way that they want to identify, but then we also have to find a way to accommodate for everyone's identity and what they choose to identify as. Like you said, like we're all in a health professions program, and in those settings, we got to find a way where we can like have an option to, if you do identify as a slice of pizza, let's put that on that chart. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, let's just find a way to accommodate for whatever you want to identify as.
So that the whole society knows.
Okay. So if the whole society should know about it and be inclusive of these people, the transgender community is quite a low statistic in terms of 7 billion people on this planet. So should they be enforcing us to all be accepting of everybody? And this is leading into something that I'm going to talk about here in just a minute.
Wait, should who be enforcing?
Yeah.
So the small transgender community in the world, should they be enforcing these acceptance laws, we'll just say, on everybody else that is not transgender?
I don't know if like enforcing is the right term. More just like advocate for it, like
Sure.
get the word out, and then that way it's not just like forced, but
Okay.
like it's something that people accept, people
Voluntary.
agree with. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if enforcing is the right word, because a lot of the times, like, because of how our society is structured, I feel like a lot of transgender people wouldn't have access to the spaces to be able to advocate for themselves in the way they should.
Okay.
So I feel like just advocating for getting, what's it called, trying to find allies on the streets who can like rally with you, can help you get into those spaces and just shake it up,
Okay.
shake things up.
So this leads me into the story I want to tell you guys. So there's been instances 3 different times. Student says, in universities by the way, student says there's 2 genders, and he bases it on factual claims, stuff like that. And then his professor says, well, in my opinion, there's more than that. I don't agree with you, so you're being kicked out of class or expelled. What do you guys think about that?
So we actually have, I mean, not saying names, we're actually in a situation like that right now.
Really? Tell me
Really.
about it.
Like one of our professors, I feel like, and I've heard a lot of my friends, like who we're in the program with, say that they have gotten 0 on assignments because the professor didn't like what they wrote.
At the UW. Wow. What's the class called? Are y'all in the class?
No, I don't even go.
Are y'all in the class
It's
right
like
now?
for a summer program, but he does. They do
Yeah.
teach here.
There is judging, I feel like.
Okay, so let me ask y'all something.
Huh.
So you guys identify as liberals. You identify as current left wing, right? Democrats specifically, or like where would you align with the current, Democratic candidates? Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders. I just want to kind of get a feel for how, where on the left wing spectrum you guys are.
Definitely Democratic.
I mean, I feel like I'm not informed enough to make a good, solid, like.
Yeah, on like current presidential candidates, but I'd say
Yeah,
that
not
like
like
I
this.
really identify with things that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
So like Green New Deal.
Yeah, definitely.
But professors are handing out 0s on assignments based on wrongthink to liberal students. Have you guys heard that conservative students have been talking about this for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's only being talked about on conservative spectrum news, so Fox, Daily Wire, Daily Caller, stuff like that. Do you think it's kind of crazy that it's happening to people on the left wing now?
I feel like there's definitely dialogue that has to occur between professors and people who identify from both spectrums, and like we have to come together to be able to have a conversation about like what we can truly consider to be right or wrong, because things are, at the end of the day, things are relative and things are subjective. So I feel like only through conversation would we be able to bridge that gap and be able to like actually create change. So
Absolutely, I completely agree. Well, what would you say to, political factions on the left right now that are saying we shouldn't talk about these things?
You want to
They are,
while you're doing it.
yeah. These.
You're just doing
So what would you say to these political factions that are simply saying, we demand that you don't speak about these things, or we'll call it hate speech, we'll get you thrown out of class, and we'll actually have you arrested in certain countries. The Canadian Human Rights Tribunals, there was a transgender pedophile, you can actually look this up, Jessica, aka Jonathan Yanev. He, she, they has filed numerous complaints with the Human Rights Tribunals against mostly immigrant women of color. The person has actually said numerous racist things on Twitter, Facebook. He's actually doing it because they're immigrants and don't have the backing to actually defend themselves against human rights tribunals. Because human rights tribunals, when you file something, you don't have to have a lawyer. It costs you 0 legal fees to file, right? The Canadians are a little bit farther to the left than the Americans so far. But currently we're dealing with political factions that don't want to talk about this. They simply do not believe in the case of free speech. In the case of groups like Antifa, they will beat the shit out of you if you wrong think around them. I mean, I don't know if did you guys hear about the case of Andy No, the journalist? Okay,
couple weeks ago.
Yeah, this was in Portland. He was covering an Antifa riot, and he got the shit kicked out of him. He ended up in the hospital with a brain bleed. He's a journalist. And he also happens to be Asian and gay, if you want to go with the identity politics thing. And this was during Pride Month. They beat up a gay Asian journalist during Pride Month. So what do you guys think about the whole wrong think, free speech versus hate speech? I mean, you said specifically we should talk about these issues, right? Now, I think you probably can gather that we identify as conservatives. But we're talking right now, and we're figuring this shit out. But what do you think about the factions that don't want to talk about it? And I would say the majority comes from the left right now.
Well, I would say that, well, like I said before, I feel like conversations are the only way we can try and bridge these gaps between like our political views, right? But at the same time, there are going to be people who exist in this world who don't agree with that idea that we have to sit down at a table and have a conversation. But it's just up to us to show them that this conversation is possible, that you can identify as a conservative, I can identify as a liberal, and we could sit here and have a decent conversation without screaming at each other or not listening to each other's views. So I just feel like this is a perfect example of like what we should show the rest of the world who you would say like it's not, listening or is not willing to have a conversation. We're just showing them that this is possible, and we're just initiating this moment, you know?
And this is something that him and I totally agree with you on.
You're very well spoken and articulate. Do you want to address our left wing audience and kind of tell them that we should have these conversations?
Get them.
Huh?
Do you want to address our left wing audience and
Basically
kind of let
repeat
us
what
know?
you just said.
And our right wing audience that no longer wishes to have conversations with the left because they've been attacked for the last 3 years over and over in the streets, on college campuses. Maybe you can address both sides and tell them, hey, we're still willing to have these conversations.
Yeah, well, I don't currently go to this school.
No, you're fine. You're a person. You're entitled to an opinion. That's all I care about.
Okay, yeah, definitely. But I think that conversations are important, and they're the only way that we can really bridge these, gaps in our political views, right? And if we stop using language like this person attacked me, unless it's an actual physical, attack.
We've actually been attacked physically.
Got it.
Many, many times.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure there are liberals who've been attacked by conservatives. So it's just I feel like we just need to have more conversations and be open to accepting different points of views and just trying to recognize your positionality and your experiences and how that relates to how you currently identify. And yeah, just have more conversations. That's all we need.
That's right.
I completely agree. No, do you guys have any final thoughts?
Get over it. We have to talk about it eventually. You have to deal with it. It's something that's happening.
We should try to fix this country and not let it go to shit, yeah?
I mean, everyone always has different opinions.
My name's Saleem Juma with Saleem N Dion. I'm standing here with... The thing we're talking about today is our first question. How many genders are there?
I don't think there is necessarily it's however you define gender, so.
So there could be literally thousands?
Yeah, I think so.
Is it okay if I identify as pizza with pineapple on it?
I'm not one to say no, so if that's what you identify as, then yeah.
Brilliant. I think I'm going to start doing that, and I expect you to use my pronouns,
Okay.
which I have to think of.
Okay, yeah, you have to make it, yeah.
So, my next question is, I don't know if you've heard, but there have been students in universities, there's a few cases so far, and they've been expelled for saying there are only two genders. What do you think of that?
I think that's a little bit extreme, because, I mean, everyone's entitled to, whatever their own opinion is, but also at the same time, I don't know, I think that's just, it's too extreme, yeah.
Right. Do you think being kicked out of class is okay?
I don't think so. I don't know, yeah.
Do you think it's a little bit nuts? Do you think, the whole ma pronouns thing has gone a little bit out of control? I mean, I can give you references. There are actually 3 cases in England where people have been jailed for misgendering someone.
Sorry, can you repeat that? That was kind of a lot of information.
Sure. So, do you know what misgendering is?
Yes.
Okay. So, in England, there has been people that only believe in 2 genders, and they have misgendered trans people, and they have ended up in jail for it.
And they did it intentionally.
Yeah. Well, there was a woman who was actually jailed in front of her children for 12, 13 hours because she misgendered someone on Twitter.
Oh. I don't know. I think that's also a bit too extreme. That's just my own personal opinion on it.
So people should respect everyone else's opinions, even if it hurts their feelings.
I would say so.
Sure.
Yeah. Just because people have their own perspectives, and even if you don't view the same way, it's important to at least open that conversation
Sure.
and, ensure that there's, if you're gonna talk about it openly, just be aware that there's gonna be a lot of different kind of people out there. So.
Would you condemn the professors that are throwing students out of class, especially in an institute of higher learning, and the governments that are jailing people for misgendering? How does that fit in with free speech? Would you condemn that?
I don't condemn. Can you define that?
Sure. So condemn is saying I strongly disagree with with what's happening, and I want to say that it's wrong. So, for instance, if you wanted to say that you disagreed with Donald Trump's policies, for instance, and you hate Donald Trump and you really have a distaste for what he's doing, you would condemn Donald Trump.
I would. Yeah, I would say I would strongly disagree with what they're doing.
And condemn them.
Yeah, I would say so. But also, I'm not too familiar with, I'm not that political. So, I'm not too familiar with a lot of the different, policies that are going on and just, the overall, even with, LGBTQA, I'm not too familiar with that either. So, I feel like I can't really offer much of an opinion on it.
I can understand. So as a non-political person, you don't swing left or right?
I would say I'm more liberal, but...
Okay. Do you think you were liberal by default because you just grew up being told that we should all be liberal? Or did you kind of come to that conclusion for yourself?
I think I came to that conclusion for myself, but at the same time, it really... the people around me and my environment, it does impact what I think. So I think definitely growing up with the community that I grew up in, it's more liberal.
Was that Seattle?
No, I'm from Oregon.
So I have a question actually.
Yeah.
So you actually touched upon a little bit of a topic that I like to call you're a product of your association or you're a product of your environment. So basically, all of your friends are liberal.
I would say they're more liberal than non-liberal.
Okay, so would you say that because everybody else is liberal around you, that it's okay for you to be liberal?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily okay. I think I formed those views on my own, and also I don't know, the media really filters out what you see, depending on what you view or what the media thinks.
She touches on it. She touches on it. She knows, man. She knows.
So it's all that I see on my news feeds and everything is definitely more of the liberal side, which I think it reinforces the liberal side. So I don't really have much opinions on the more conservative side because I don't really know.
Can I ask you something? Have you ever tried, reading Daily Caller or Daily Wire or even Fox News?
Typically no.
So I'm a conservative myself,
right.
And I actually make sure that I go and watch people like ContraPoints, Philosophy Tube. And I also do the mainstream media, Vox, HuffPo, Verge, all the left-leaning people and all the actually extreme leftist people, so I can kind of gather what they're saying and I can better refute their arguments. Mm-hmm. But to end this interview, I really want to strongly encourage you to make sure that you not only get points of view from neutral people, so I'd suggest checking out Timcast, Tim Pool on YouTube. He's more of an objective journalist, but also try looking at the left and right-leaning sides, and you might just maybe start to get a sliver of truth. So,
my first question for you today is, how many genders are there? And give me a number.
Genders in the world in general?
Yeah.
Just two genders. To me, that's what it is. But people do identify as either gay or bisexual, and that's fine too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said, off the top of your head, there's two.
Yeah, there's two.
Okay. So how do you respond to the people that say that there's more than two?
I would say that's what they believe, and I'm not the judge,
Okay.
But if they say that's more than two, then if they persuade me somehow, then I'll go along with it. I'll start saying there's more than two. But yeah.
So what got you to that conclusion that there's just only two?
It's just in the Bible. I'm a Christian myself. It's just Adam and Eve,
Okay.
But yeah, I said,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But like I said, I don't discriminate. For real, I know I know like people like gay, that's cool, you know. And if they say like there's more than two genders, then I'll be like, yeah, that's their decision.
Right.
I'm not gonna discriminate against them. No, like everybody's people, you know.
Right, exactly. Because there's certain left-wing factions that will literally say that there's literally unlimited genders. Like what? Like, so how do you feel about that?
Like
the number unlimited.
Unlimited, I don't know. 2020 from now on, it's gonna be crazy. So there's gonna be like a bunch of different theories. But for me, like I wouldn't say like there's unlimited. I would say there's a specific amount. But I mean, everybody believes in their own, you know. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I mean, so I personally also believe that there's two genders. And how do you align politically? I'm really curious.
You said how do I what?
Align politically.
Align politically?
Are you Democrat or Republican?
I don't know. Democratic, I believe.
Okay, that's interesting. So, you know, this kind of leads into my story. So, there's been instances in the world. There's 3 different instances where a student at a university said that there's 2 genders, and then their professor said, "Well, in my opinion," and by the way, the student that said that there's 2 genders backed it up with facts. Then the professor said, "Well, in my opinion, that there's more than that." And because my opinion differs from yours, you're kicked out of class / expelled. How do you feel about that? Like, is that justified in any kind of way?
No, that's not right. Because in class, they're teaching us to learn. We should be able to speak freely and still learn in the class. For the professor to kick him out for speaking his mind, that's just not right.
Yeah, because I mean, I actually have the video on here where the student literally is super calm. The professor's pretty calm too.
Yeah.
But he goes, "Well, there's factual evidence to say that there's only 2 genders." But then the professor's like, "Nope, you're done." Like, so
right.
I mean, that's not really fair, right? Because, like you said, you literally said that the whole purpose of an education system is to form out your own opinions.
Yeah.
So why is that student being kicked out for literally having his own opinion that's based upon fact to get kicked out? Like this, it's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it's super weird. Like, I don't know personally like what the relationship was between them, but I would say like that off the bat, that's just not right, because school is a place to learn. If we have a question, that's basically stating a question, because they're stating opposition what they believe, and for him to get kicked out of class for stating something that they believe in, that's crazy. If anything, that professor should be fired.
Right. Yeah, no, I would actually kind of agree with that. So we were actually just interviewing some girls and this other guy, and they said that there's kind of a similar situation where it's people that say that there's 2 genders, liberal students, mind you, that they're getting zeros on their assignments at here. Kind of screwed up, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So here's another story, and this might kind of not surprise you, but in the United Kingdom, there have been people that have deliberately said there's 2 genders, and they've intentionally misgendered someone who is transgendered. All right, and because of that, they were actually jailed for it.
That's not right. Like, for real. Like, there's like good people like that identifies a different gender than what they're born of, and for them to be jailed, like say like there's people like did drive-bys. It's up here too in Seattle, like even down south and stuff. It's crazy, and there's people that get out, and for them to be jailed for something like that, that's not right. Like,
right, because you know, I swear to God, if it happens in this country with respect to freedom of speech. That's going down the really bad path, because we have freedom of speech laws to protect us.
Yeah.
And if we're going to start jailing people for intentionally misgendering or kicking people out for saying that there's 2 genders in their classes, I don't know what to tell you, man. That's a really bad path.